Bullying, and what is it? I want to tell you a story of two queendoms.
You know, stand up for yourself. It's the only way to be. You have to. You have to.
Last few days, a lot of you have been asking me about what's going on, and honestly, I don't really know if I'm ready to talk about it. But what I am ready to talk about is kind of a topic that relates directly to the matter at hand. And so that is a great segue into the first installment about bullying and what is it. I just got done finishing a hangout by Chris and Andy with Blaire.
Dude, I was hella bullied in school, and honestly, it was hell at the time, but now that I'm an adult, I'm like, that made me really very much of a strong person. It really did. I mean, granted, if you put me back in that headspace back then, I'd be like, no, get me the fuck out of this school.
Yeah.
But now I look back and I'm like, dude, I very much maintain my own comfort now, just in the everyday way I move through life. I'm very much secure in who I am because, like, it was helpful in a way.
Basically, when we were in school, there wasn't so much protection from the administration in terms of bullying. You got put on the playground or you got put in the lunchroom and you got to go about your business, and the only time that interference ever happened was when somebody got pushed or injured or bleeding nose or whatever, and then they would contact your parents or send you home. The zero tolerance policies, like you do one thing, you fuck up, you're done. And I think that was a response. That was the first step towards the kind of neutered situation that everything is currently in. And that neutered situation is the reason for my misery. But I will get into that maybe at a later video.
Do you remember the time where you just went enough and maybe like you were being bullied and you just fucking snap back? It lets people know, all right, you can't fuck with this person, then it all stops.
I want to tell you a story of two queendoms, which in essence tells the story of my elementary school experience. In my elementary school, when I first started, there was a queen. Her name was Einat, and she was probably, in hindsight now, the most rich, spoiled brat at that school, or at least in my class. And we all looked up to her, and we all followed what she said. As the new kid, whose parents move around a lot, obviously I became a target, and I had trouble making friends because when you move to a new place, you wait for someone to be nice to you, and then you hope for the best. She made it a point to make sure that nobody talked to me. I was some obnoxious British Canadian girl, didn't belong, and she had her sidekick. I think her name was Yum. Means ocean in Hebrew. The sidekick was such a nice girl when she wasn't around Einat. She was so kind, she was smart, and she was like me. Her parents were English speakers, and we were in Israel, and I feel like in an alternate reality, or maybe if we would have met in college, maybe we would have connected as friends, but in the position she was at as the deputy asshole, she didn't really have that freedom. Einat would decide everything. She was the queen of this class. And she would decide where we would have our bonfire on Lag BaOmer. It's a tradition to light bonfires. She would decide who was allowed to come and who wasn't, even though it was a classroom organized thing that parents could participate in. But unlike today, when the parents will organize it for the kids would get together and organize it and tell the parents which kids they're going to hang out with, and those parents would communicate with each other. So it was a lot backwards from what it is today. And so she would decide who was invited to her fancy bonfire. And us kids, we would run around the neighborhood collecting little bits and pieces of wood so we could have the best, biggest bonfire. It's stupid, but it was fun. And she would decide who was being spoken to that day or not. The silent treatment was a thing that she often used, not for punishment, just for fun. She found it very amusing to have me come to class and me go to my two familiar friends and say things like, "Hey, how's it going?" and then just look down and giggle while they didn't answer me, and me go to my seat and know that I was just being ostracized that day. I'm pretty sure the teachers knew what was going on, but it was a natural social coming of age, I'd say. It wasn't fun at all, and I was at the butt end of it for 6 years. Anat would also decide who was invited to whose birthday party. If she didn't like you the week of her birthday party, you didn't get an invite. Later in the years, when the kingdom transferred over to a new queen, and she was a lot meaner. Wow. And Shani was her name, the second. Very poetic now that I think about it. Shani thought she was fucking amazing because she was a, what we would call, child star. Not really by any actual standards, but her parents were involved with some kind of Israeli Hollywood types. So they got her in on these child sing-alongs where she would be one of the little cute kids, like picking candy out of the dirt and like doing adorable things while they sang along about candy or about the birds or about the ocean. And she thought she was really cool for that. She thought she was a star. And I, by that point, had grown really tired of being told who I'm allowed to talk to, who I'm allowed to be with, being made fun of for the boy that I liked. And I just all around didn't like the whole thing. I wasn't game, and I didn't want to be told what to do, and I didn't want to participate in this oppressive system anymore. And by this time, I think it was 5th grade, so I was probably 9 or 10 years old. Shani was so much worse. She would, of course, all the class, we went to recess together, and classes kind of stuck together, and she would decide who was and wasn't allowed to play soccer that day, or if we were playing soccer or tag, and who would be on whose team during soccer. And I remember I always wanted to play the goalie. I'm 5 feet tall. Actually, at that time, I was the tallest girl in my class, so it only made sense to make me the goalie, but she wouldn't do it because she knew that I wanted it. She would make me, she'd say, go over there, and she'd tell me that I smell, and she made up this nickname for me that caught on to the whole class, Sunshine. And I know it sounds cute in English, but in Hebrew, it was making fun of the fact that my curly hair would stand up like this. And at the time, I didn't have as much control over it as I do now, so it wasn't cool at all. And when the teacher wasn't paying attention, or when I would walk by her table, she would kind of whisper it under her breath, and everybody at that table would giggle. I started to not really want to put up with it anymore. I reached a breaking point, kind of like the story that Chris tells of his little brother.
Literally, he got bullied even harder because he was even more nerdy and Asian than me. I remember being in the schoolyard, and then
more Asian. Like, how does that work?
So he just kept getting bullied, and one time he fucking snapped, and I was in the playground, and I just see him around for recess, and he has enough, and he just out of nowhere, and just clocks the guy. Didn't really get a good punch, but destroyed his watch, and he just going to town on this guy. I'm like, what? I don't see my brother like this at all. He was just so emotionally enraged, and then I was just holding him back. And after that, nobody picked on him.
So I was sitting at dinner with my parents one time, and I brought up hypothetically to my father, if somebody was bullying me at school, should I be able to do something about it? And he said yes. And I asked him if he would be mad if I, punched them in the face or something. And he said, if they're being assholes to you, then punch them in the face, which felt like really empowered me. So the next time that we were booking it to the tree, the last person to arrive to this tree would be it. And so I booked it to the tree right as the bell rang. I got there, I touched the tree first or second, I don't remember, and she and her regal clan would just slowly march over after having stopped at the bathroom to do their lip gloss or whatever. Wouldn't start the game until she got there because Her Majesty had to appear. She looked right at me and she said, "You're not playing." And I said, "Yes, I am. I got here first." And she said, "Okay, you can play, but you're it." And I was just furious. This anger had taken over me, this anger that has seethed inside of me all that time of not standing up for myself. I was just like, this is it. I couldn't, as an 11-year-old or a 10-year-old, it just bubbled inside of me in an uncontrollable rage. So I'm crying all over the place. and I said to her, if you don't let me play and follow the rules, then I was going to punch her in the face. And she looked at me with the smuggest face and she said, you would never touch me. And then she looked at everybody and she said, okay, let's play tag, Naomi's it. And like people like are looking at me and looking at her because this is not normal, like for somebody to stand up to her. And as she's like close to me and turning away from me to like talk to everybody, I punched her in the face.
You know, stand up for yourself. It's the only way to be. You have to. You have to.
She looked at me like I had just stabbed her in the stomach, but I remember her and her little like sidekicky person going to like the drinking fountain to like wash this girl's face. I remember like as I'm walking, I'm trying to calm my heart. It's beating so hard. I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna walk up to the principal's office. I'm just gonna tell them what happened. So as I'm walking past her and her sidekick to get into the entrance that leads to the principal's office, her sidekick looks up and goes, you're gonna pay for this! And so I go upstairs and I sit down with the principal and I'm like bawling my eyes out and I tell her everything that happened. I go back to class. Shani's gone. Like, I guess her parents came to pick her up or something. And everybody is looking at me like I've murdered her. Like, I've committed some heinous, horrible crime. I do not remember anything bad happening after that. Nothing. I don't remember being called names. I don't remember being ostracized. Don't remember being at all interacted with from the outside, from that group of royalty, so-called. It felt good. It felt good to stand up to my bullies and say, no, fuck you, no more. But I stood up to them. I told them, this is what you're doing, this is what's not okay, and this is what I'm gonna do if you keep doing it. In essence, I guess what I'm trying to say is stand up for yourself. Stand up for yourself and face your shit head on. See what happens.
Do you remember the time where you just went enough and maybe like you were being bullied and you just fucking snapped back on someone?
Y'all want the story? It's a good story.
Yes.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So I was in 8th grade and there was this boy named Luke and he was sitting next to me, and I went to school from kindergarten to 8th grade with the same 20 kids. It was a very rural school. Everyone was just here the whole time. And it was 8th grade, so I had been around these people for like, you know, my entire life basically. And this kid next to me, Luke, kept calling me a faggot. And the kid next to him was telling him to call me a faggot. He'd be like, call Blaire faggot, call Blaire faggot. So he kept doing it. And I said, Luke, if you do that one more time, I'm just gonna hit you. And then he did it one more time, and I grabbed this big ass textbook I had in my bag, and I just, bam, right across the head. Right across the head. And
how many pages?
Like a math book, a nice math book.
Yeah, and the story gets better. So I hit him. He didn't do anything because he was a fucking bitch. And then, like, you know, they never do shit after you retaliate. And then, but I was the one who got in trouble at school, which is so stupid. However, well, I guess I was the one who did technically the more wrong thing. Yeah. But then they sent me home early, and then around 3 o'clock when school got out, someone pulled up to my driveway. It was him and his mom, the kid that I hit. And his mom made him apologize to me for making me hit him.